about the California law and how that would affect, people here.
Yep, so the California law is, some call it sort of a mini GDPR. Some people say it's not like GDPR at all. So essentially, out of the Facebook Cambridge Analytica case came poof, sort of long story. Fast forward, we have this new law. It is effective January 2020. So companies have about 14 months to get ready. And there's, unlike GDPR, there are some minimum thresholds. So there's three. The first is a company has to sell and earn revenue of more than 50% of their data. There's probably not a lot of companies that will fall in that bucket. The next one is you need $25 million of revenue. So that's an easier bucket to fill, but a lot of companies will still be smaller. The one where I think it's going to affect a significant number of companies is you need basically 50,000 website visitors per year.
Wow.
So it's about collecting personal data. Personal data under California law, just like GDPR, includes online identifiers. So all those cookies and all the web tracking, basically if you have Google Analytics on your site and everything that you're collecting in there, is going to put you into that household information on the visitors who come to your site. And if you have 50,000 website visitors over the course of the year, you're likely going to fall into scope. So with that, you have to have an enhanced privacy notice. The California law is very focused on selling data. So if anyone listening sells data, you really have to read the law and get some advice to understand what your responsibilities are. And then for anybody, you have individual rights very similar to GDPR. So just as an example, maybe I want to be deleted from your system. So let's use email. Instead of just opting out of your emails, I don't want to receive your newsletters anymore, I want you to actually delete me from your email system. So a company has to be able to handle receiving that request, knowing where all the places that my name is, and delete me.
Ah, interesting.
And that's just one example.
Yeah.
There's many examples, or many different individual rights. So that's just one of them. And companies need to be able to manage all of that and do it within 45 days.
Yeah.
And the last piece is really related to data security, kind of where we were talking about before. So there is an individual right of action if a company suffers a security data breach and they're found really to be negligent, that they didn't do any of the steps that they needed to have been doing. There's an opportunity for an individual to sue the company and an individual
Wow.
right. So companies really need to start focusing on their security and making sure that they're doing all the steps that they need to be doing. So,
Do you think any of these laws go too far?
the U.S. has we have what's called a sectoral approach. We got HIPAA, we have, the financial ones. Now we're going to have California. And so they haven't really limited what a company can and can't do. What they're trying to do is make a company responsible for the data. So GDPR is pretty limiting. We could have a whole conversation on my thoughts of GDPR. And I like to say I don't make the laws. I just try and help you implement them. But with California, there's a lot of amendments that need to happen with California. It's not very clear, so where it will end up will be kind of interesting. But at the base, California is really designed to give users knowledge and choice. And I think knowledge and choice is a good thing.
Yeah.
How exactly we get there in the California law, again, that's very technical. Mm-hmm. So I think there's some room. But what you're starting to see is California often leads the charge. So think to yourself, okay, so I have some people in California. If Jody from Georgia says I want to opt out or I want to delete my data, are you going to say, no, you're from Georgia? Or are you going to say, okay, I'm going to honor everybody because segregating is probably just not a good best practice. So companies have to start thinking about that. And we have other states who are following suit. So there's many bills across the country that are just like California. So now you'll start thinking, well, I got California and I have state number 1 and state number 2 and state number 5. And so now in the news you have companies like Apple who, and Facebook and Google and all the big tech giants who don't want a 50-state law approach. That's terrible. And are pushing for a federal law so that it is easier for a company to implement. And you have companies like Apple who say, privacy is literally the most important thing that we need to be thinking about in this next era. And it is critical that users have choice and notice and knowledge about what's happening with their data. They have some basic fundamental rights. So you have companies like Apple kind of leading the charge, and they're, to me, the pinnacle of of a great privacy example. Go to their website and you'll see how they're baking privacy into the phones and into all the hardware and into the software and what your choices are right at the beginning. Not the long, boring privacy notice, but just literally a marketing page that explains, here's what we're doing with Safari browsers. Here's what we're doing with the hardware. And you have Apple leading the charge on worldwide announcing how important privacy is.